Hello, hello, everybody. I'll give everyone a moment to connect to sound here. Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1253rd New Social Environment. I'm Joshua, a Programs Associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Elmgreen Dragset and Dan Cameron. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. Michael Elmgreen and Ingar Dragset pursue questions of identity and belonging and investigate social, cultural, and political structures in their artistic practice. They are interested in the discourse that can ensue when objects are radically recontextualized and traditional modes for the representation of art are altered. Elmgreen and Dragset are based in Berlin and have worked together as an artist duo since 1995. They presented numerous solo exhibitions at prominent institutions worldwide. And our host today is New York-based curator, art writer, and educator Dan Cameron, who launched his career in 1982 with Extended Sensibilities at the New Museum, the first institutional effort in the US to examine gay and lesbian identity in art. Cameron has organized more than 100 museum exhibitions, including surveys of Martin Wong, David Wojnarowicz, Faith Ringgold, and others. In 2007, Dan founded Prospect New Orleans and organized the first two editions. And with that, I'll pass it over to Dan.
Great, Josh. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. It's really a treat to be able to be the host and moderator for today's new social environment conversation, especially because of who our guests are today. Um, I have the wonderful good fortune of having been able to meet Elmgren and Dragset fairly early on in their career. I remember being very interested in Scandinavia shortly after I started working at the new museum. And I think in '97, when I made a trip to Denmark, Michael and Ingar had only gotten out of the Royal Academy, I believe, a few years earlier, and we met and started talking. And then, of course, they were soon exhibiting everywhere. And so it was a thrill to just follow them and at one point do a collaboration together at the new museum in 2002. I don't know if you guys remember, but it was a show called Living Inside the Grid. So welcome, Michael. Welcome, Ingar. And thank you for being in New York City in the same time zone while we're interviewing you. I'm downtown, you're in Midtown, and I think everyone else is in Brooklyn. Before we go into your new show at Pace, LA, which is what we're really here to talk about, would you mind, since partly we are observing the 30th anniversary of your collaboration, could you give us just a small sort of thumbnail sketch of how you met and decided to combine your practice into one practice?
Well, we, we met in a very unartistic way. I have to correct you, Dan. We did not go to the Royal Academy.
Ah,
Actually, we come from two different backgrounds. I came from theater performance, and Mikael used to write poetry. Um,
okay.
and we met in a gay club in Copenhagen called After Dark, and started flirting on the dance floor. And at some point, the club closed, the bars closed, and we had to walk home. And it turned out that we not only lived in the same borough and the same area, but we lived in the same building. So we had to walk home together. And since that, we spoke every day almost for 30 years.
Would
I
you,
I
sorry,
just
dive
start,
in, Ingar.
I just started doing a little bit of art projects that was kind of a coincidence, and I had to do a project in an artist-run space up in Stockholm, and I wanted to have these uh, abstract cuddle monsters that were knitted. And Inga happened to be a really good knitter, and I was a terrible knitter. So he helped me out, and we went up there. And the audience up in Stockholm can be a little bit stiff and formal sometimes. So
You don't say.
no one was sitting cuddling with these art objects. And we were thinking, well, we will do it to provide um, some imagery of how you could interact with the work, and people thought it was a performance and act. And that was how we started doing our performances.
So in a way, it was almost happenstance that you became collaborators. You needed Ingar, and he was there and had your skills, and you started thinking of projects together. And the theatrical dimension of your work, I've noticed that you're often treating audience members as if they're sort of somewhere between sitting in the orchestra watching the show and stepping on the stage and becoming part of the show. And I feel like that's a tension that you've explored for most of your career in a way.
Yeah, that's a nice observation. And we started doing performances together for 2 or 3 years before we did our first sculpture that I think you came and saw as part of this show at Louisiana Museum back then in 97,
Yes.
right? But doing performance in art spaces is very informative. We always recommend young artists to do performance, to try to understand space and understand movement and how our bodies relate to the world around us is really like the best way to learn. And for us, it was uh, really a way to start exploring what can we say, the mechanisms of the institutions around us. We found that the art world was quite had a lot of conventions. It wasn't quite what we expected. When you're young, you think like the art world is totally free and open, and people always have fun, kind of. But as we know, like both art spaces and the rules and regulations around the art world, often unwritten, are quite challenging to navigate.
You were expecting an art world full of revolutionaries, weren't you?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Or at the very least, progressive.
Swilling,
Especially at that time and being in Scandinavia, because there wasn't really a defined contemporary art scene at that time. Not so much knowledge about the international art scene. So with a fellow artist, we organized our own exhibitions. We were very surprised when we finally had an audience. And yeah, in the beginning we did our performances, but then it became a bit boring that we were always invited as a fun live element. There would be quite a boring group exhibition somewhere, so we would do the activity in the corner, and then we said, well, we also want to do boring objects like all the other artists. And we made our first sculpture actually up in Louisiana that you saw. That is a museum that is situated by the seaside. And made a diving board in the viewing room because there was no more exhibition spaces left for artists like us.
They were still putting you in the performance corner.
Yeah, exactly. And then we saw this amazing viewing room that had the view out to the sea. And we came up with the idea of making a diving board that would penetrate that window. So the base of the diving board was situated inside the museum, and the board was going out through the window.
It has this trompe l'oeil effect when you enter the space, right? It seems as if you can interact with the diving board and jump into the sea just beyond. But of course, you would have to break the window and you'd probably top yourself off if you did jump.
But it's a sculpture that projects itself out into the social world and pulls the viewer in a way that's not typical. As you say, the viewer isn't sure if they're actually supposed to mount the diving board and at least make it seem as if they're prepared to take a dive.
Yeah, we call these works our denials. So it seems to invite you to an interaction that is then denied from you. And I mean, as you remember, the 90s were very much about, interactive art and, seemingly sort of being very, very democratic. But we were sort of questioning this element as well. Is it how, democratic is it really? And we find like the world around us often seems to be inviting you to a lot of things that are basically impossible for most of us to achieve.
Take on.
Part of pick up.
I was in New Orleans earlier this year and turned a corner in the Best Off Sculpture Garden and noticed one of your diving boards. Only in that case, it's not interactive. It's very much a sculpture, a public sculpture. But you've put the boy at the end of the diving board in a way that the viewer, or speaking personally, you immediately emulate with that position. I mean, you sympathize, because I have in my lifetime gone to the edge of the high dive, thinking I was going to dive, only to turn around and go back down the stairway completely humiliated.
Oh, yeah.
Because I did not have the courage to jump off the diving board, at that time. And that piece seems to just crystallize that moment of doubt and insecurity at the same time that it's so beautiful and visually poetic.
Thank you.
No, we often deal with masculine roles, and that work in particular deals with the courage not to fulfill expectations, not to step into the role of the hero, but be yourself, have your integrity, even you turn around and climb down again.
So why don't we start talking a little bit about your current show? I know you've had some survey exhibitions recently. And this is yours. I know it's not your first show with Pace, but is it your first show with Pace in Los Angeles?
Our first show in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So this is the introduction to your work by LA.
Yeah.
Can I ask first about the title, the Alice in Wonderland syndrome?
The Alice in Wonderland syndrome refers to a neurological disorder some people suffer from when they're very tired, exhausted, and aren't we all in these times. They might perceive objects either enlarged or diminished.
As Alice does.
As Alice does, yeah. So thereof the name of the syndrome. So we visited the gallery about a year ago and realized that one of the two rooms of the gallery space had half the width of the larger space. And we thought maybe this is a fun way to think about, starting point for thinking about scale. And this being LA, we know that, of course, this is also a city of a lot of, stage set building, replicating reality in one way or another. So in the smaller space, we shortened it and lowered the ceiling and copied every detail of the larger space so that you would enter the same exhibition twice, just in two different sizes, whereof you see, a documentation in front of you on the screen.
So all of the wall works, the freestanding sculptures, everything is exactly 50% at the scale as it is in the other room.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's absolutely idiotic. No, making a show that is in two parts and one show is exactly the same, identical with the other part, just changed in scale.
Yeah. We even found the spotlights half size.
So you replicated everything. It's
the whole space, yeah.
Not the front desk person, because the exhibition is almost as if you walk into her dream or her mind somehow as she's sleeping at the front desk.
She is the one who's exhausted. And of course, like having a person in the reception area of the gallery sleeping is, of course, quite unusual for the daily routines in the gallery, where you are supposed to be very facilitating and service-minded and welcoming. And here she is sitting forever, sleeping when people come and pass by and want to ask questions.
Well, I would also just toss in this observation that, reception desks in galleries, especially sort of more blue chip galleries, have always functioned almost as guard stations, viewed in a way. You go from a public space, which is the street, and what you're trying to do is get into the gallery space so that you can be alone with the artist. Or the artwork. But in order to do that, you have to pass a kind of an inspection, where you look at someone, they look at you, they acknowledge you, or they don't acknowledge you. They make you feel welcome, or they make you feel unwelcome. And so when you step into that inspection, point, and there's no one to inspect you. Instead, they've sort of like just collapsed in exhaustion on the table. I mean, I would immediately feel like I was getting away with something that I needed to tiptoe past in order not to wake this person up. Because if I woke this person up, the rules of the game would change immediately.
Yeah, and she does something so normal, right? I mean, she's just having a nap or a rest or a sleep, which we all do, you know, at night, sometimes in daytime, and it's still so shocking to see someone doing that in a professional context.
Just so I can get some gratuitous fun out of it, maybe some confusion happened at the opening that you would be willing to share with us.
Yeah, I mean, like first of all, in the days during installation when she was already up, of course, all kind of deliveries to the gallery is also normally going through the reception. So you would have all kind of reactions. Some UPS guys would try to be very gentle and silent, and other ones wanted to have her signature, so they started to say, "Mm, mm."
Hoping they'd wake her up.
At the opening, the most touching thing was that there was a medical doctor at the opening, and he was very shocked because she was still lying there, and the opening was busy and noisy, and he tried to wake her up because he thought it was dangerous when people just pass out like that. Um, and he was quite relieved when he found out that we didn't need emergency.
Well, to see this character as our sort of Bartleby character, it's someone that just refuses to do her job. She prefers not to.
And she becomes, in a way, us, or the person we want to be. We want to say no.
Exactly, she becomes our anti-hero.
And when we came up with the idea and we started to work on the concept for the show, we suddenly recalled that the book from Otessa Mosvik, My Year of Rest and Relaxation, that is about a young woman who decides that she want to blow herself out for a year. She gets a lot of mm, sleeping pills and psychopharmaca from her shrink, and she has a job in a gallery, so she falls asleep all the time in the gallery and get fired. And we had the great pleasure at the opening, just before the opening, to have a talk with Ortesa in the gallery. So it was really nice to also bring in the world of literature and a different kind of audience also for that talk.
Well, how did the writer happen to be there at the opening? Did you reach out
Oh,
especially?
Yeah, we reached out to her, and she happened to have moved to LA from New York. So
It's fascinating. I also had this feeling, but maybe this is something I always bring with to an LA encounter, is that she also had that sort of universal glowing flesh, and blonde hair that makes you think of an aspiring actor from sort of the Midlands who's come to Hollywood and is doing this day job while doing screen tests that her agent sends her to. It's almost like as if the job of being on the reception desk of a gallery isn't a real job anyway, because you don't really have authority. You're not the artist. You're not selling the work. You're just there to provide this sort of way station between the outside and the inside.
it's actually based on a real life experience because we were doing a show with Pace in Geneva. There was a very sweet girl working in the gallery, and it was during installation, so we had very long hours, and there was no audience coming into the gallery, so she took a nap. And she was so shocked when we re-entered the gallery. So she was jumping up, and we were like, no, 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 do it again. And we took photos of her, and it's her that we were casting. She came to Berlin, and we were casting her in the studio. So it has a it's based on a true story to be in a Hollywood language. She came to the exhibition also.
Not only that, but her official job description probably changed, right? So that it pays now, she's the one who takes naps.
Yeah.
Mm.
But
For,
if you,
for
sorry,
us, it's always been important to highlight all the work that is surrounding the exhibition making. I mean, we have done works where we have depicted two male art handlers spooning in the back of a car, surrounded by artworks. Because in an art fair, for instance, you have all the technicians installing the work, and it's very stressful, and nothing would happen without them. But then you have the VIP opening, and none of them are present any longer. They're not invited. And for us, it's really been important to um, involve and inform about all the people who is part of making all this happening.
I think that's great. Now, can you talk a little bit about this? We just passed the couple sculpture where they're embracing and I did want to just ask you a little bit about um, this is maybe the second life-size sculpture, correct?
Yeah.
As well as half-size.
So this is a last sculpture in a series of works where we have shown like kids, or in this case, like, two young men wearing VR masks. And the idea of like starting to do these works with VR masks came really from a time when everyone were like excited about VR, and we got invited to, maybe develop content for some of these new platforms. And we never really found a way into that medium, say. And what we saw, even from artists that we really love and respect, wasn't always so convincing. And we thought we don't really want to enter this world and be these amateurs that think they can do something with VR. But we do like to, do works that relate both to, space, as we talked about, and the new technologies that surround us and new realities. So we basically then have done these sculptures with figures wearing the arm mask, and you sort of have to imagine what they're seeing and what world they find themselves in.
So you, on one hand, have like this very uh, intimate gesture, but on the other hand, they might be into different universes.
like we all are these days.
Because we are not only in real spaces, we are also in virtual spaces. Electronic gadgets have become part of our autonomy. I mean, we can't imagine a person without uh, having a phone, an iPhone, or having headphones on, or like we are always like applying these new electronic gadgets to our bodies.
One of the reasons I think that we didn't ever see the AR mask become commonplace um, is because smartphones got so much more sophisticated in terms of being a delivery platform for the kinds of software and the kinds of virtual reality that as consumers we're supposed to be wanting, or that at least we're on the receiving end of buying. But this piece turns that equation around a little bit in that here you have the combination. You can't really get much closer than having, your lover in your arms. And yet, in this sense, we discovered that, well, having your lover in your arms is good, but wouldn't having your lover in your arms with an AR mask showing you a completely different reality, wouldn't that be better? Because it's the reality of the moment plus this added reality. And I think this, I don't know, what I see in the piece is sort of a satire, a critique of this assumption that it's never enough. That,
Or,
that we
or
must always want more. That no matter what we're experiencing in real time, our mind is already somewhere else looking for another stimulus.
well, that's capitalism for you. So,
We, we are
Digital capitalism.
you're always left wanting.
VR masks are interesting because they really uh, make us less conscious about how we appear in physical space. If you wear the VR mask yourself, you lose your vanity somehow. You lose your self-consciousness in relation to appearance. And that was what was fascinating to us when we were trying it out, all these kind of like new VR artworks. It was more fun to watch each other than the works in the VR.
Mean watch each other bump into furniture?
Something like that, or doing stupid movements, or being afraid suddenly, or.
So just to backtrack a step or two, this emerges from an outside interest um, from companies or from galleries or from sponsors to get you to make a VR or AR work. But instead, what you did is you made a piece about the world that AR is giving us or is shaping for us for our consumption.
Correct. Yeah.
Carved in traditional Carrara marble, just to make it even more like absurd. So like you have this latest development of technology, but made in the most classic material you can imagine.
I also think that having the piece posed in front of sort of the quintessential LA garden view, where everything's beautiful and green and tropical and just kind of bursting with life. And who cares? Because you don't have to look at it. We already know it's there. You can be off in this other reality as well. Did you feel that, or did you in any way intend for the work to reverberate in a special way because you were in sort of archetypal Hollywood, because you were in the land of movie making?
I mean, we did versions before, other versions. This is a new sculpture, uh, but we thought it would be quite fitting in this kind of the mecca of entertainment industry to show one of the sculptures there. Yeah.
Um, can we see some of the non-figurative work just to talk a little bit about some of the other ideas? Um, so Berlin, New York,
Mhm.
you have the painting of the sky, but then you also have the reflection of the space that the viewer is standing in, or no?
Yeah, and reflection of the viewer.
Maybe
Of
we
the
can see
viewer.
some more slide
Yeah.
of the wall works, Joshua. The- This is a series that we've been working on for a longer time that we call Sky Targets. And each of them are depicting skies. Each of them is depicting skies from a place we visited in our lives that has some kind of significance for us.
Hmm.
Um, so it's photographs we've taken over years, and now it's turned into an oil painting, but the painting is done on polished stainless steel. So yeah, the steel is reflecting the space you're in and also the viewer. So it becomes a dialogue between, our memories of a certain place on the planet and the here and now.
And I mean, yeah, we always take pictures of clouds on blue skies, different places, but it's something that connects us all. Like it looks the same, more or less, no matter where you are in the world, with some variations, of course. But it's also the sky is also a projection for. Wishes, visions, beliefs. Uh, I mean, in most religions, you have the imaginary God in the sky.
It's very mythological space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it has, yeah, throughout our whole cultural history, it's been like a place of magic.
Well, now this piece that we're looking at right now makes a reference to maybe your most well-known um, being in a place where you're not artwork with the sky over Marfa. Um, it's the work that probably everyone knows that you've done, and I've seen it a couple of times myself. And what's remarkable about the work is how easy it is for a viewer to imagine it in their mind. Like as soon as you describe it, it's almost as if people don't need to see it. That
Mhm.
that the concept sort of rules because you're not in Marfa when you see it, but you're also you're also, not looking for high-end fashion, at the same time. And so for me, it brings up this problem, not a problem, but it brings up the characteristic of displacement, where what you're perceiving and what you're thinking aren't syncing up the way you should. So there's a disjunction between where you are and where you're imagining yourself to be, in terms of where the artwork is pointing you towards. And so for here, this in these works, it seems like this 50-50 balance between a sky that existed and is now more of a memory. And then this here and now where you're standing in front and you're seeing yourself. Even though when I see these photos, I'm always asking myself where the photographer is, but that's another side issue at the same time. Do you feel displacement is a quality that you're interested in generating?
Yeah, in a lot of works, we work with a displacement because suddenly you see something that is quite familiar, but you see it in a complete new way. You suddenly, um, it's kind of like getting a new identity by being placed in a setting that is not meant for that object, like placing a, Prada boutique in the middle of the desert. It's not about luxury shopping. It's about the nature that surrounds the shop. And we really kind of sort of the project as a land art project. But then it's a work that is a typical example of changing its meaning through social media, because we inaugurated Prada Marfa in 2005, and that was before Instagram. And we thought it would be almost a hidden project, something people would speak about, but very few would visit. And then suddenly, through social media, it actually became maybe our most well-known artwork.
And this work is another example of our denial works, since it sort of invites you to a shopping experience, but the door is forever closed, right? So you can't really interact with it.
Which is very democratic because we can all window shop.
Then I agree,
Sorry.
easy to work that is easy to imagine, but also us coming from Scandinavia, going to the desert, going to Marfa and that area is such an amazing experience in itself. So yeah, being physically in front of the work and seeing the sky, this sort of vast sky around it, and the landscape is also for us now that we visited it after the opening some years ago, was a shocking experience, because the world has changed so much and we got older and we have changed, and and then you go to this place and basically nothing changed around it, which is very unusual nowadays.
Exactly. I remember taking someone to Marfa Prada when I was doing a project in Marfa about 10 years ago. And they were disappointed. And then the more we talked about it, the more they realized that that was the point, that they were meant to make this extra excursion. It wasn't just enough to go to Marfa. You had to go just a little bit further out on the outskirts of Marfa, only to realize that you were left kind of like holding an empty bag, that you were there with the trappings of a consumer experience, but no way to satisfy those cravings, no way to satisfy those desires.
I think disappointment is completely underrated. It's very important.
As a source of inspiration
Yes.
Keeps you
or
going.
driving force. Can we speak about the other David, perhaps?
Mhm.
This is a important piece, not that they aren't all, but this especially has meaning for you guys.
Yeah, so the other day it is again like a figure wearing a more contemporary electronic gadget, wearing the headphones. Actually, the piece is in a way a sculptural edition of a performance we did in, I think, 96 or 97 called Try, where we had three guys on rugs around the gallery space, and they had brought their own music and they were listening to the music on their headphones, and people coming in could of course observe these guys walking between, but you had to imagine really their experience. And yeah, this idea came up as we were working on the show for Musée d'Orsay 1 or 2 years ago. And it's an actual Berlin DJ depicted called David that also works with us at the studio. And we thought his name is David, so why don't we keep that as a title for the work as well? And it, of course, maybe might bring some associations to another quite well-known David sculpture.
Made a few years before.
Now, you also recently did a merman sculpture, correct?
That's true. We were in 2012, we were commissioned to do an artwork in the city of Helsingør, north of Copenhagen in Denmark, close to the Louisiana Museum. And the city, in spite of its weird name, is well known because it was a setting for Shakespeare's Hamlet, the Kronborg Castle, and they were earlier the capital of Denmark and the power center in Denmark.
Because that was where the king resided.
Yeah. And then they became a poor industrial city, and Copenhagen took over. So we thought maybe we should give them a Little Mermaid too. But maybe we should change the sex of the Little Mermaid, and they have a male version and without a fishtail. So there would be like a little bit of a difference, but sitting in exactly the same position and sitting on a stone the same shape as the Little Mermaid. And that, to our big surprise, caused an uproar. Conservative politicians went bananas. They went crazy and extremely homophobic. They were having like comments on television news and headlines in newspapers about this sculpture being gay. And
Gay.
yeah. And we had to explain to them, we can be gay, but the sculpture can't really be gay. I mean, it's a sculpture.
Be limited in terms of what it can feel.
Yeah, exactly. But it really was quite a big scandal until the work was inaugurated. And then people actually liked it and was not afraid of it any longer. It became the symbol of the city. People use it as a logo for many things. And that shows that, well, often the strongest fear is of what you not know already, like things you don't know about.
To give a little bit more context, maybe the sculpture is situated on the former ground of a shipyard. So, part of the fear was maybe that this figure did not depict the masculinity as that people associated with that industrial compound somehow. And it was really said in a lot of readers' letters and so on that this is not like a masculine representation that they would like to see.
But it really, the boy is more of an adolescent, it seems. No, he seems to be kind of in his teens.
He's actually in his 20s.
Yeah, model.
As the Little Mermaid was a 14-year-old girl, which maybe is more problematic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're going to start calling a statue like this homoerotic, then you have to enter into the parallel territory of whether the Little Mermaid is herself eroticized and has been treated as an erotic figure all these years, but subliminally. I don't know. My gaydar didn't go off when I saw the kid. That's all I can say.
Speaking about disappointments, American tourists are often very disappointed about the scale of the Little Mermaid, the national symbol of Denmark, when they come to Copenhagen, because they imagine something as big as the Statue of Liberty. And there you have like the tiny, modest sculpture of the mermaid in real human size.
Which is a beautiful thing about it, I think. That it's like
Definitely.
very sort of.
I mean, it's not called the medium-sized mermaid, is it?
No.
So is this work now in LA, or has it been incorporated into the show?
It's showed in the garden in front of Pace Gallery at the moment.
So is it an addition, or was the original piece not a permanent piece? It's now traveled to California.
Yeah, this is a version of the Danish piece. Yeah. So in Denmark, it's a stainless steel version that also reflects the town around it and sort of distorts also the viewer and Kronborg Castle and the harbor around it.
It also makes me think about Hamlet, who is himself. I mean, the prince was immature. He was not all that macho. He was possessed by doubt and stricken with anxiety. And it's sort of like, well, it seems like an appropriate figure for Elsinore to sort of have it there.
That's true.
Yeah, and as Mikael said, I mean, people seem to have taken it to their hearts now.
So they've embraced it,
Yeah.
even though it's gone.
No, it's not gone. The stainless steel version is there.
The stainless steel is still, I'm sorry.
Yeah, permanently. Yeah, yeah.
Well, before we get to the questions, can I get you guys to just tell us a little bit about maybe what you're working on now? Anything in the next 6 to 12 months that particularly has captured your imagination?
Oh,
Not really
we
feeling ready to talk about future pieces.
well, we actually do a project during Freeze in London.
Mm-hmm.
Is very much about the audience, um, where we create a sort of cinema setup, and we have shot a film that is shot blurred, that's being screened, and it's as if you enter this cinema in the middle of a feature film, and you find yourself lost, and shift the focus, hopefully, to the seating area of the cinema, and there you will see several realistic figures sitting, watching this film. And you're welcome to sit amongst them as well, and engage with the situation.
We're very interested in audiences, I think, like because of our backgrounds, like writing poetry, doing theater, you're very depending on an audience. You don't have any illusion of making a masterpiece that doesn't need a viewer. It would be pathetic to make a book that no one read, or do a theater play without any audience. But the role of audience has, of course, also changed throughout history. I think it's only since Wagner, actually, that you have this very disciplined theater audience where people sit and shut up for the whole performance. It was much more
facing the stage.
Facing the stage. It was much more chaotic and loose before. So when people complain about cinema goers today not being able to sit and be silent, but they're on their phones and walking in and out, it was actually how it was a couple of 100 years ago in a theater.
That's funny. You guys are reminding me of kind of why I fell in love with the city of New Orleans, which was through the very, very different relationship between audience and performer when it comes to live music in a place like New York City, and when it comes to live music in a place like New Orleans, where the phenomenon you're describing, which is the audience feels automatically like they're part of it, like they're part of this scenario. You don't shut up and listen. You talk. Sometimes you talk to the performers on stage while they're performing.
Yeah.
And this is considered an appropriately respectful way of engaging with the music to let the performers know that you're part of it. You don't have to sit silently. You can get up and dance, you can move around, you can drink, you can smoke, you can do whatever you want. In fact, sitting there and listening is sometimes construed as not being very interested in what's going on. Because if you were interested, you'd get up and dance.
Beautiful.
I especially like this view of the giant woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really feel out of place when you walk into the 50% scale room. You're suddenly a giant. And often when you walk into museum or gallery rooms, you feel a bit small because the dimensions are very big, like you have
Cavernous.
very high walls, skylight, concrete floors, and it makes you feel even a little bit also out of scale. You feel smaller. But when you walk into our room with diminished objects, you really feel you fill a lot.
Now, just curiously, on the level of sort of how works are presented and acquired, is the smaller room a piece in and of itself, or is it just another group of works that are smaller than the works?
They're
Yeah.
smaller. They're not half price necessarily, but they're smaller. They're half price.
Yeah, I mean, it would be wonderful uh, to have it acquired by an institution, maybe as a full setup. But often we do exhibitions also in institutions where a big part of it is torn down, scrapped, and recycled afterwards. Um, and we are used to that. There's also some kind of joy in this situation of an exhibition ending, and afterwards you only have the memories.
Hmm. You know, also if the half-size room was preserved by itself, it would never have as much meaning in the future because you almost have to start in the full-size room in order to appreciate what entering the diminished room really feels like.
Yeah, we could probably recreate a similar where else, but
You'd rather move on to new territory.
uh,
Well, I think it's about time, if I'm not mistaken. Josh, you can tell me if I'm anticipating or not, but I've had a lovely conversation with you guys, but I know we've got a good turnout today from Brooklyn Rail admirers and readers. So why don't I turn it over to Josh to see if we can bring some of these questions forward?
Thank you all so much for that dialogue. I have a few questions here lined up. If you are interested in submitting a question, there's a link in the chat that you can submit your question online. So our first question will be coming from Greg. Greg, I'll give you the opportunity to unmute yourself and ask this question.
Hey guys, thanks for this talk. I think my question, you kind of already addressed part of it, and I think it dovetails nicely with the comments Michael and Dan have made about audience. But I'm particularly interested in your own perspective on the ways you represent the body, because you seem to have developed quite a range. There's some naturalistic figures and these sort of very sculptural, like clearly different material, like marble or steel or something that you see in LA and other places. And you mentioned these cases where, your own performance, you're sort of in there, but like this piece with the guys on the rug, and another case, I think you had somebody sitting in a chair listening to music, where you use sort of live people, but not as performers necessarily, almost in a sculptural way. And so I wonder if I mean, each one seems like an obvious choice for the work that it's in, but I wonder if you ever sort of examine these types of representation against each other, or if you've decided, we have this whole range, we're going to use this or that way, or they work differently for you as the ones making the work.
yeah, it's a very good question and something we talked a lot about over the years. In the beginning, of course, it was our own bodies in the space doing performances. Then we started to let the space itself perform, so to say. Like, we dug down a full-scale gallery in the ground, shifting the relationship between viewer and the gallery space. We hung a gallery up in two balloons in Hamburger Bahnhof, the Museum for Contemporary Art in Berlin, and you got disoriented when you visited it. So the space itself was sort of swinging around you and had a character, so to speak. Then at some point, I think we felt like we need maybe not necessarily a performer, but started to do figures in the beginning, more like hyperrealist figures that sort of stood in for us as performers or someone else as performers, to sort of continue talking about the relationship between the human, shape and the architectural surroundings. And then there were some years where we were like very skeptical about combining, for instance, like a figurative sculpture in metal and one in silicone or wax that seemingly seem like a real person or a live performer. But we sort of given up that hierarchy over the last years, finding that people are actually quite open to read these different levels of reality in front of them. It maybe wouldn't have worked in the 90s even, and I don't know why that happened, but we have like good experiences of letting them sort of play an equal part.
It's especially fun to mix the very realistic sculptures together with the live performances, because that really confuse people. Like you really take the sculpture as a living person, and you get a shock when the performer is starting to move. So.
Yeah, the sculpture you referred to, a guy sitting, he was sitting nude in a chair as part of the Nordic Pavilion at the Venice Biennial.
Right.
This project called The Collectors, where we created 2 homes in 2 different pavilions. That was an example of what you say, where you had like the guards actually became sort of performances, took on a role, and there was the guy sitting with his headphones on was part of the guiding the exhibition or guarding the exhibition. Then again, we had a figure of a dead collector floating face down in the pool outside the pavilion. So together, I think these pieces were part of creating a sort of mysterious, unfinished narrative that people could complete as they visited the pavilions.
Thank you both so much for that response, and thank you, Greg, for that thoughtful question. Our next question comes from Chloe at the Rail.
Hi there. Thank you so much for this conversation, which has been such a pleasure to listen to. I have a couple questions that I've always wanted to ask you. One is, I'm really curious. I remember seeing your Whitechapel pool in 2018 and being just really astonished by the level of detail and attention to the site itself, but then also using it as this fictional launching off point and this storytelling device in the space. And I'm curious about your research process when you're approaching a new project. Like, what does that look like? How long does it take? And how do you decide what you're going to envision together and make together?
For Whitechapel, it was a combination of factors that led to that particular work. We actually had planned a complete different exhibition until half a year before the opening, and then we changed everything, and they were open for that. It's almost like when we visit sites to have a research for a show coming up, it's almost like the venue is asking to be transformed into something. We call it that we dress up the art institution in drag, because it changed its identity, at least for a little while we are having the show. The public abandoned pool that we made at the Whitechapel was very much in the context of the London Mayor Boris Johnson's cuts in public funding, and especially in the poor boroughs. He would cut down a big number of small libraries, youth clubs, and public pools.
And you had to pay to go to the football field, in some areas.
Yeah. And then you would have at the same time like popping up luxury spas where you would pay like half of your monthly salary to have a foot massage. So like this grotesque development, especially in East London, where Whitechapel is located, was something that we got inspired by to do the project. And then we also, often when we do our installations, we think a lot about the audience movements around in the exhibition. And at Whitechapel, you would have the pool in the middle that people couldn't jump into. And then they had to walk around along the walls in the space. A very strange kind of space ballet, a strange choreography for the audience.
Thank you for that. I also wanted to ask you about humor as a device in your work, because I feel like you use humor in a really inventive way to communicate with your audience in a very show don't tell kind of way. And I wonder if you always used humor or if that was something that developed over time.
I think we were always interested in the absurd. We are very big fans of Samuel Beckett. That is, he was writing plays about very serious existential topics, very bleak, very dark, but tremendously funny at the same time. And I think that's I think we use humor also as a sort of anger management instead of being moralistic, pointing our fingers or start to scream. We use humor as a way to talk about something that is more serious.
Thank you so much for those answers and for today. This has been a pleasure.
Thank
you.
Our next question comes from the audience. Much of your work operates as institutional critique. Have you ever encountered barriers to your ideas, and how have you overcome them?
We don't see it really as an institutional critique directly. It's an institutional dialogue, maybe, because part of our thinking is that all institutions, even like in their architecture, is just structures that can be, altered. It's made up of people. It is with some, dialogue and conversation and taking time, things can change. And there's so many wonderful people working, almost anywhere. Sometimes what we do is present something that's so hard to do that's it almost can't be realized. And then the second or third proposal that we also really wanted to do meets like more understanding and willingness.
Yeah, for younger artists, our best advice is don't curb your ambitions already. I mean, just come up with the wildest, and then what you end up with is maybe what you really want to do. That is often a quite good strategy.
And in our experience, people also like really kind of want a challenge. They want some change, in the routines.
What a great answer and what great advice. One more question coming from the audience as well. Given the spatial nature of many of your projects, they elicit so much humanity, discomfort, gentility, etc. The UPS employees in LA are such a great example of this. Have you ever encountered any other unexpected reactions to your works within specific contexts?
I mean, with our public sculptures, we experiencing it all the time. I mean, They're vandalized, ruined, and climbed on, and interacted with in ways we would not have anticipated when we first placed the sculpture. But it's also fun to experience how people actually suddenly engage with public space in an active manner because they feel that they have their say in this public sphere. It's not only like privatized advertisement everywhere or VIP areas or traffic regulations. It's actually also possible to claim your own kind of existence within the public space. And sculptural projects can be a good trigger for that reaction. Even negative interaction like vandalism can be somehow a symbol of people engaging.
Thank you so much for those answers. Um, Now that we've sort of wrapped up this Q&A, I believe you have a reading prepared for us before we go ahead and close out. So I'm going to pass the virtual mic back to you. And yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna sound a little bit awkward because we're not native English speaking, but we'll try our best. It's an excerpt from a script we have made for this blurred movie that is part of the installation we will show during Freeze in London, where we did the cinema, where seated in the auditorium, they're like realistic figures, and then we have shot a film that is out of focus.
With two professional actors.
With two professional
Not
actors, a gay couple, one painter, and one writer, and the painter is about to have his first exhibition opening. We'll start. You won't even miss me. You'll be too busy being center of attention.
You're just running away because you can't face being with real people.
They're not real people, they're art people.
People are real. They're the people coming to look at my work. They're my audience.
They're not a real audience, though, are they? They're just like all the other wankers strolling through spaces filled with objects, so full of themselves they haven't got room for anything else. I read somewhere that the average visitor to an exhibition only spends 30 seconds in front of an artwork, if they stop at all. You can't even eat an ice cream that fast. Imagine a reader only spending 30 seconds on a book, or if people left a movie after only half a minute in the cinema.
But art does move people. Look at the dream you told me about. You kept going back to look at the same painting over and over again. It clearly meant something to you. Or at least it evoked feelings in you, reminded you of something.
Exactly. And I'm leaving to try to find out what.
But this is my first opening in a real gallery, a new beginning.
For you.
And for you too. You've been there all along. You helped me, inspired me.
Come on.
Why do you think I asked you to write for the catalog?
1.5 measly pages in your 100-page full-color catalog.
Oh, that's all you finished, but at least you finished something.
That's not the only thing I finished. I didn't tell you, but I did finish the script. It's in my bag.
What? What kind of script?
It's a film, a feature.
A film about what?
You have to see in London.
That was so, so special. Thank you so much for
Bravo.
sharing that with us. And I'm gonna have to find my way to London now.
Please do.
Thank you so much, Ingar, Mikhail, and Dan. Thank you, Emily, Talia, and Lauren from PACE for their support in preparing for today's event.
Definitely.
We'd also like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art and Tiger Foundation for sponsoring our NSE program and making these daily conversations possible, and for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rails YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 25 years. A donation directly supports our writers, production staff, and operations. Support our work through the link in the chat. And if you're available, join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation with Alison Kemmer, Gordon Wilkins, Sam Adams, and Barry Schwabsky on the event of June Leaf, Shooting from the Heart, on view at the Gray Art Museum. And as is Rail tradition, now has come the time where you can unmute yourself and say hello and goodbye as you leave.
Thank you.
Mikhail,
Thank you so
Ingar.
much.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Seeing
much.
you